This is a podcast about new crops. You're going to love it. Join us on The Cutting Edge, a podcast in search of new crops for Wisconsin. Welcome to The Cutting Edge, a podcast in search of new crops for Wisconsin. Today is a field notes episode, and the focus is on mechanical harvesting of hazelnuts. Hope you enjoy it. Welcome, this is Jason Fischbach. I'm the agriculture agent, Ashland and Bayfield counties with UW Extension, and today we're in southern Wisconsin on Paul Ronsheim's farm evaluating two candidate hazelnut harvesting units. One's an olive harvester, one is a blueberry harvester. In most hazelnut production regions, hazelnuts are either swept or vacuumed up off the orchard floor, and we're going to try something different here in the Midwest. The nuts don't readily fall out of the clusters, plus with all the rain we get in the fall, and the desire to have more vegetation on the orchard floor, we would prefer to harvest these directly from the shrub, which is what we're going to try to do with these straddle harvesters. Let's see if we can find our host, Paul, and see what he's thinking about all these harvesting options. Paul, what's the farm name?
Blue Mound Hazelnuts.
And where are we in Wisconsin?
We're 6 miles south of Barneveld, near Dodgeville.
Gotcha. So I'm looking out across the planting here. About how many acres? How many plants?
About 2,000 plants, 6 acres.
Gotcha. Have you ever hand harvested these things? The whole thing?
Yes, it took several weeks.
Gotcha. I bet you're glad to see these two big harvesting units sitting in your front driveway here.
You bet. This is a thrill.
Yeah. So we've got two harvesting units that we're going to trial today. One we call Big Blue, which is actually a modified olive harvester. And the other one we call Mr. Rotary, which is a we haven't done anything, changed it. It is a blueberry harvester that uses vibrating rotors to harvest the berries. So we'll see if it works on the hazelnuts. We're just waiting for them to get everything set up. So, Paul, what are you looking for today when you see these harvesters go through your plants?
I look for them to remove at least 40%, maybe 50% of the ripe nuts. It's really my target right now, what I hope to see. This planting is from seed, so the ripening is over a 3-week interval. So it makes it difficult to get everything in one pass.
And last year we came out here, and I'd say we probably harvested too early. This year it seems like we might even be on the side of too late, or do you think we're on target here?
I think you're on a sweet spot. Things are really ripe. There's only a few that are still hanging on, and yet not a lot has dropped. So I think it's a good time for a machine to come through.
Gotcha. As they've ripened, have you seen blue jays and squirrels and everybody else stealing nuts, or are you out in the middle of a field enough that you've got some protection?
Blue jays are the main problem right now, that and raccoons, I think.
So we're going to go wander over and find Dave Bonhoff and Scott Sanford, the brains and brawn behind today's trials. But first, we have some observers today. Let's find out who they are. Michelle, who are you and why are you here?
I'm Michelle Mansky. I work for the Savannah Institute as the event coordinator, and I'm here to take pictures for our social media and just to support the other staff.
Have you ever seen hazelnut mechanical harvesting before?
I haven't. I'm super excited. I've been waiting for this for weeks, months maybe.
Yeah, we've been waiting for years. We're excited for this Big Blue because it's huge and it's novel and it should be fast. So, Chuck, who are you and why are you here?
I'm Chuck Zinda. I'm a landowner maybe 11 miles north of here, and I have some hazelnut crops, but they don't look as good as this.
I noticed you were out hand harvesting today. Is that something you want to do long term, you think, or are you looking at one of these harvesters?
Well, I think a mechanical harvester would be the way to go. We tried hand harvesting last year and only did about half.
Okay, I'm wandering over here to where the action is, where the big harvesters are, and you can see boxes of oily rags and some banging going on there and some hydraulic fluid containers, lowboy trailer. So first, let's talk to Dave here. Dave Bonhoff, who are you and why are you here?
Dave Bonhoff, I'm an emeritus professor at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I'm here to run some experiments with some mechanical harvesters, experiments on removing green clusters from hazelnut bushes.
So the listeners can't see this behemoth, but I noticed the guy that drove by with the huge combine kind of looked at this machine with some jealousy because this thing was so awesome. What are we looking at?
You're looking at a Oxbow olive harvester, and if you want to check one out online, Google Oxbow 6340 and you'll get a good appreciation for what this machine is. This is the first one in that series, the prototype, and it's pretty much like the one that is commercially available. We did add a small bin to it for collecting our samples during our test runs today. Other than that, it's just a different color than what you'd see online.
You have dimensions, height, width, weight on this thing?
Yeah, I think it's 12 foot wide, and boy, I'm going to guess it's 20 foot long. Height-wise, it's probably about 16 feet high, I would say, as it sits there, which means that we have to do special things to move it over the highway. And this transition that we're going through right now takes us about an hour, and that is to get it from that transport mode into harvest mode. And that involves actually moving the cab up about 3 feet. It moves up on some rails that we have to remove to do our harvest work. So, yeah.
I noticed some sweating and swearing over here. Is it going okay?
Oh no, I'm not swearing. Scott was maybe a little bit.
All in all, it's looking pretty good, I think.
Yeah, we'll be ready to go shortly.
How about that bucket of bolts across the way? What's that thing?
Yeah, that's a BEI, which stands for Blueberry Equipment Incorporated, I believe, a company that's now defunct that was in Michigan, and they built an array of blueberry harvesters through the years. This one is several models removed from their demise, actually, and it does work quite well for harvesting hazels, and we have 3 of them in operation just in Wisconsin and Minnesota.
So this one's a little different because it's a rotary shaker
Yes,
versus
this is
a sway bar thing.
Right. It has rotating wheels, rotating wheels with the rims removed, if you want to think about it, spokes. If you can picture that. A rotating bicycle wheel without the rims. Anyhow, those spokes move into the crop, and they also vibrate back and forth as they rotate, as those wheels spin, and that's what vibrates the crop and hopefully removes the clusters from the.
So when we get out there today, what are you hoping to see on the harvesting?
Well, I don't think we'll see too much more than we've seen in the past, and that is actually fairly efficient removal of clusters. The drier they are, the easier they are to remove. We can adjust different machines to be more aggressive and remove basically every cluster that's on that plant. When we do that, we also end up removing other things we don't want to remove, like catkins, perhaps a few more leaves. Not that that's an issue this time of year.
And how many gallons of hydraulic fluid do you usually like to spray on out there?
Yes. We have went through gallons. Actually, earlier in the week, we had a hose break on Big Blue here, the other harvester, and that went through 5 gallons in about the snap of your fingers. And that right there is about $120 for people that are into purchasing hydraulic fluid. So, yeah, it gets costly.
It's part of the game. That usually doesn't happen, but that's part of mechanical harvesting and big equipment is big repairs and expensive stuff.
I'm Scott Sanford. I'm with the University of Wisconsin. I'm an outreach specialist working in energy and alternative crops.
Awesome. So the Big Blue is kind of your baby, huh? You've got this thing tuned up and going. Are you excited to run it?
Yeah, and we're hoping not to get another oil bath.
Right.
But yes, it's been a lot of work. It was a machine that had been neglected, and we've brought it back to life.
Yeah, this is awesome. So you ran it at Stoughton already. What did you think? Are you pleased with it?
Yeah, it seems to do a good job. It was our first trial, so it's hard to tell percentage of nuts it's going to take off versus moisture content.
Yep.
But it did a fairly good job, especially at slow speeds and high thrashing rate.
Okay. Much damage to the stems?
Only if the crop itself or the base is too wide.
Got
If
it.
the base is over 2 foot wide or thereabouts, you end up running over some of it.
Okay, so more damage just because the plant was too wide and you ran it over than actually shaking the stems and breaking stems?
Yeah, it didn't seem to be a lot of breakage in the stems. We got a lot of old wood off in some cases,
Yep.
but no, it didn't seem to affect the stems. We shook a lot of leaves off,
This
and
time
catkins too.
Right. Yeah. All right, we're standing right next to Big Blue, and this thing is huge. So in the tunnel, so this thing is a straddle harvester, goes right over the top of the hazelnut row, and it's probably, oh, David, how tall are you? 6 feet?
6 feet.
Hey, we got another 4 feet on top of that.
3 at least.
Yeah, 9 to 10 feet tall, this tunnel, so we can handle plants at least that tall. And then we can raise the whole unit up another 2 or 3 feet, so we could probably accommodate 12-foot plants without a problem, probably even taller. All right, we got Big Blue fired up. So the basic function of this thing is it straddles the row, and there are beaters inside, bars that shake back and forth, so they jostle the plant as it goes through it. And the idea is to generate enough force to shake the clusters right off the plant, but not too much force that you break the stems. Now the advantage of these hybrid hazelnuts, because they're shrubs and those stems are really flexible, so you get pretty good, you can apply a lot of force without causing a lot of damage. So the nuts fly off and they get on these catch plates at the bottom of the unit, and that's on an angle, and that they slide to either side of the unit and then get moved with these bucket conveyors up into across a fan to get rid of the leaves and stuff. And then they go through into a collection bin. So that's the basic idea. Pretty straightforward. Well, this is exciting. I'm sitting in the jump seat of the cab. We're making our first run down the row here. Scott Sanford's the operator. I'm just along for the ride. See how this thing goes. I'm about 15 feet up in the air here on the top of this thing. You can hear the unit firing up. It's a nice bird's eye view. I can see over the whole planting. Now the tricky part is driving, because he can't really see how wide these things are. So he's trying not to run stuff over. Well, we're rolling along here. Nuts are flying off, which is good. And the only thing I hope is we don't hit a hornet's nest. We're all in trouble. All right, on this next row, we're going at 2 miles an hour, which is pretty fast. I'm walking pretty fast to keep up with this harvesting unit. Again, because time is money when it comes to this expensive equipment, you got to be able to go as fast as you can, and that's part of our research project, is just how fast can we push. Dave, what happened out there?
The machine self-leveling ran the whole platform down into the ground, and basically the machine started acting like a plow.
Ah,
So I didn't want to move forward anymore.
no harm, no foul though.
No, we took it off of self-leveling. It's manually leveling it now.
So Paul, you've seen this in action, one row. Seems like it's exceeding your 40% removal. Are you pleased so far?
Yes, it seems to be really taking the nuts. They're quite ripe, so it's the perfect time to test this, and they seem to be coming off really well. So
You okay with the amount of plant damage? Doesn't seem like too much.
it seems comparable to the BEI or even better.
Gotcha. David, what do you think about all this?
It's amazing how fast it works to harvest all that, and how many nuts come in off a 100-foot row.
Yeah, right on. And it looks like these bins are actually pretty clean. Not too much leaf or stick material, which is good. So it should make them easier to dry down and clean. Okay, we'll let those guys do their business here running the machines. We've got a couple other bystanders here. Let's see what they think about all this stuff. So, Eric, who are you and why are you here?
I'm Eric Hagan. I'm with the Savannah Institute, the farm director, and I'm here to check out the hazelnut harvest.
What do you mean farm director?
Well, Savannah Institute's buying a home farm, and where we'll be producing at scale a number of different agroforestry systems and crops, tree crops, and I'll be the farm manager for that site.
That's awesome. So, is this your first time seeing hazelnut harvesting in action?
It actually is for machine harvesting, yeah.
What do you think?
Pretty awesome. Let's do it.
That's what I like to hear. Yeah, so far so good. We're using the BEI now to clean up the first row as part of our experimental design. and we're not getting anything off because the oxbow removed pretty much all of it already. And yeah. Hey Scott, what's your name? Why are you here? What do you do?
My name's Scott Brainerd. I am a tree crop analyst with Savannah Institute, and I am here at Paul Ronsheim's to witness this incredible mechanized harvesting operation.
The price of admission today is that you have to have hand harvested hazelnuts at some point in your life. Have you done that? Maybe today even?
Yeah, just came from hand picking a whole bunch of American hazelnuts about 20 minutes north of here, and so this is great. You just sit back and watch these enormous machines do the work.
Awesome. So far, so good. Both machines have got their pros and cons. I like the action on this BEI with those rotary harvesters, but the discharge on it is kind of slow. It just doesn't have the same capacity to handle the volume as the oxbow, but for the price, it seems like a pretty effective machine. So Dave, we're a few rows in. Any thoughts?
Yeah, Jason's not doing his job. I think we got to can him, send him back to Ashland.
What do you mean? I'm holding a clipboard.
Okay. That's good. Yeah, I forgot you're in charge. That's good. We do need somebody to head us up here. We're kind of lost. It looks like both machines are performing. We'll see how well this BI does when we send it down the row before we harvest with the Corvan machine, the Big Blue machine. Right now, it looks like the Big Blue machine is cleaning this stuff pretty clean, picking it pretty clean, and we're not getting a lot of stuff on the second pass of the BEI machine. But we're just getting started, so.
All right. Definitely one downside of these BEI harvesters is you've got the rear discharge on both sides, and you're feeding out of the chutes into bins. In your bins, typically there's not a lot of room for capacity there, so you're offloading quite often versus the big oxbow unit. You've got a continuous feed conveyor that can feed into a trailer towing behind or off to the side, so you can really fly without a whole lot of messing around between bins. Okay, it's been a good day, and things went well. So we'll give these guys a chance to recover in about a week or so. We'll come back and get Dave and Scott's impressions on how things went this year. Scott and Dave, it was a whirlwind of days and nights for you guys to get these machines up and running and run these trials. It's been almost a week now. How are you feeling?
Good. We got it done. We didn't have spilled much oil, and we're got nuts in the shed.
So what I thought here, now that we've done some harvesting for 2 years, is just kind of get your initial thoughts or reflections on each of these different harvesting units. So maybe we can start with the Aronia harvester with the name I can't pronounce. So what was that thing we used a couple of years ago? So my sense was it's just undersized for hazelnuts. Is that generally the issue with that one?
Well, I think there are two issues. One, it's a half row unit. So you're splitting the row in half. You're bending the plants over quite a bit, and your stems in Stoughton anyway are pretty good size in some cases. And it's very aggressive. It cleaned all the nuts off, so that's a plus for it. We also took lots of catkins and leaves off. We didn't have time to really play with it a lot because we just had it for one day. And we lost a lot of nuts out the front. A lot of the nuts fell before they even got in the machine. And so you had to go down each row twice.
Plus it's slow to start with, yeah? You got to go slow, and it's, yeah.
Yep.
So it seems like with all the different units we've tried that one's just not going to rise to the top, right? I mean, it's a pull behind unit, which is nice because it's maybe cheaper than a self-propelled, but it just seems too slow and too aggressive.
Yeah, and that machine was about $50,000 new. You can't buy really any used ones. And you can buy probably a good used blueberry picker for that kind of money.
Right.
It's self-propelled.
Yeah,
and it'll do the whole row at one time. It's over the row, full row.
its configuration really doesn't lend itself to larger shrubs. It's just a matter in which it has to bend them over, and a orientation of the head relative to that crop when it's bent just doesn't allow for bigger stuff. But one advantage of the pull type units, and any pull type unit in the future, and even self-propelled machine, is would be having the operator, the driver, down closer to ground level, where you can see the base of the bush being fed into the machine.
Mm-hmm.
So as we look at harvesters in general down the road, and perhaps design of a special harvester, I think that's an essential part of a hazelnut harvester, is that the operator is right down at ground level.
Especially with shrubs where you just can't see like the base of a trunk like you would on a
Right.
tree.
Yeah, you're lost, and Scott can speak to that.
So yes, when bushes are way too big, they're not going to harvest very well in any kind of harvester.
Right.
A typical, what we're classifying as what we're looking for, something no bigger than 8 foot tall and 6 foot around, you can pretty much see where the base is from either machine. You're kind of going by the canopy and assuming that the canopy is uniform both ways.
Mm-hmm.
I think the bigger problem is some of our shrubs have bases that are 16, 18, sometimes 2 feet in diameter.
Well, we had them up to 4 feet at Stoughton.
Right.
We were laying down a foot on each side on some of those shrubs.
Yeah, so if the shrub gets too wide, our throat of the machine is 18 to 24 inches, I think, something like that.
Yeah. So both BEIs and the oxbow, it's basically the width of that plant at the base really can't be more than 18 inches. It seems like.
Yeah,
even
or
narrower,
6.
probably better.
Yeah, you're better because then the driver has some leeway as to which way they go.
Also understand we never ran the oxbow unit or the Corvan unit, Big Blue. We never ran it near to its full height. And that's because we needed to keep it down to the ground to be able to gather the crop in. Now, if there was a single stem, we could move that harvester up a couple feet, which would move our picking head up a couple feet, and therefore we'd be able to harvest higher or taller crops.
Well, let's go through each of these other 3 units. So the slapper type BEIs, there's a couple of them being used in the Midwest right now, and you guys had the opportunity to use one down in Southwest Wisconsin. What do you think? I mean, those seem like the most available and cheapest units out there. Are they good enough, or what's your take?
I'm a little well, I think they're not as aggressive. They will probably do fine with ripe crop if it's ready to. If it's the kind of crop you're going to touch and it's going to fall to the ground. The challenge, I think, is for some of these big shrubs. Once you get them in the machine, the fingers don't have enough strength to actually move the bush much. And I was seeing lots of drop before the bush ever got in the machine, because it bends the top of the machine down, or the top of the bush down, and it starts shaking before it ever gets into the machine. So we were losing nuts on the ground right in front of the machine before it was coming in. And that's going to be true with almost any of the harvesters. The BI rotary is probably better because the rotary is toward the back and probably not as aggressive until it gets right to the fingers. But that's one thing I did notice, and we broke fingers off, even a brand new finger on that slapper unit, just because the bushes are so big. The arm has a set range of motion, and the nylon finger is the only thing that can move, and it's basically bent and snapped off a brand new finger. I think we lost 5 fingers in one evening.
I would tell you that all the harvesters did fairly well, in my opinion, in terms of their ability to take off clusters. I think some of the numbers are going to show that, but that doesn't mean that there can't be improvements to all these picking heads. As a matter of fact, I think you can be a lot more aggressive. Most of these harvesters are designed to handle berries that can't take a lot of abuse. So even the catch systems, the shaking systems are all designed to be a little, more tender with the crop. Let's put it that way. And I think we can be a little bit more forceful. And there's other ways to make picking heads that I think you'll probably see in a harvester that was designed specifically for this crop. But that's what we're learning. I think that's a big thing, a big takeaway of all this is we watch these different heads work. We know what their shortcomings are. We know what the crop demands. We'll be able to design, for that need.
So what's your take on the rotary unit, having run that for 2 years? To me, watching the plants come out the back end on that thing, it seems like a better action where it's delivering the force to knock those clusters off, but it's not swaying the branches around as much as the slapper type is. So maybe less damage, but I don't know. What's your take?
Yeah, plant damage, I don't know that there's much. The plant damage I saw, for the most part, was where I ran it over because it was too big or I wasn't lined up centered on the row. It's not to say that there wasn't some damage. It just is not real extensive with, broken branches and stuff. Biggest challenge, I think, with both BEI units is they can't handle the amount of twigs and leaves that we get off. Just the cleaning end of it. You can do about a half mile an hour, 3/4 of a mile an hour. And if you get above that, the cleaning system on the backside can't keep up with the unit. I know the one test we were going over 2 miles an hour with a BEI, and the guys in the back were just going, they couldn't keep up. And nuts and branches going all over the place. Dave can attest to that because he was in the back.
Yeah, I would just point out that you can definitely move with all machines. You can move down the road at a pretty good speed. That's not a problem. We can knock the nuts off, but it's just in the BI machines, the buckets, well, it doesn't have buckets. It really has a conveyor doesn't have very high paddles, if you want to call them that. And it's too steep, I think, some of the elevators. So you got material that's rolling back down. There's a number of shortcomings, but again, that's not something that we'd ever worry about or even need to deal with in a machine that we would design down the road. And one thing we do also, he mentioned sticks, and I don't think a lot of people realize this because they're hand harvesting, but when you use a harvester like this, you're knocking off a lot of very short twigs. The older your bushes get, the more of that you get. And one of the problems we'll have down the road is actually separating that out. So the question is, how well does your crop husk when you got those sticks in there? Do you need to move some of them out before you husk? Those are questions that are still left unanswered that we'll find a little bit more about in the next couple of weeks as we start working with stuff we collected.
All right, so the Oxbow unit, running it there at Paul Ronsheim's, it sure was a crowd pleaser. Seemed like everybody was pretty impressed by it. And Scott, it seemed to me you like driving that thing.
Well, it's got a nice cab on it.
That's right. So, what did you think? That was your kind of the maiden voyage this year at that thing after spending months and months getting it up and running.
Yeah, I mean, it has, the cleaning, the back end of it cleans. We couldn't plug it. It doesn't take sticks out, but it cleans the leaves out. It only requires one person to run versus the other requires 3 people to run it. I say one person to run the harvester. You're going to need another person possibly to help with unloading the crop at the end of the rows. And it's got capacity. I mean, we were going 2.5 miles an hour for tests, and if you got the right rows and comfort with the driver, you probably could do 3 miles an hour. We're knocking stuff off. We were harvesting at 33% of its full capacity setting
on the beaters. Wow, yeah,
on the header.
That was it.
And we tried to go to 45, and it was basically too much. Basically, we were taking all the catkins off, and we tried it as both a sway and a slapper unit. It seemed to work equally well.
And you didn't break any of those bows in there, right? Because
no, we didn't break any bow rods.
Yeah.
And with the rotary BEI, we didn't break any rods that I know of this year either.
So like Dave said, if you did jack that thing up, I mean, put the hydraulics up, you could be 10, 12 feet off the ground and handle material that maybe 10 feet tall.
Yeah, but the problem is you got to realize as you get up more, the branches spread out more, and So your biggest loss on those any of the machines is down around the base of the crop.
So we're on relatively flat ground. How much slope do you think these units can handle? How much comfort would you have, Scott, tipping that BEI on? Because
The
you can adjust.
BEI is rated at 20%. I wouldn't want to get it on 20%. You can level it. We had tried automatic leveling, but it put us into the dirt. If you had sloping ground, you could try to, level it up and keep it level with it would help with the center balance a little bit, but I don't think it matters that much with the harvest operation. If you got on a real slope, it might with the conveyor if things were tumbling backwards because you're at such an angle, but.
Yeah, I don't want to mislead anybody. We weren't on flat ground. At Paul's place, that is what you call sloping ground. And at one end of the field, you're not going to have slopes, even in southwestern Wisconsin, are too much greater than that. They're long, but they're about at that angle.
Yeah. Well, and we were going up and down them.
Yeah.
And some places you might be going across them, and that's more the issue.
Well, it's a good point in terms of arranging these plantings. It probably makes more sense from a water management. You'd like to go with the contour, parallel to it, but maybe harvesting, you'd rather go perpendicular to the contour, huh?
Yep. And I think, in some places where they grow coffee with sloping ground, I think they're going up and down the slopes so they can mechanically harvest versus across the slopes, just for that reason.
How about that oxbow unit? How much could you, on a side slope, would you be comfortable with on that? What's that rated at?
So the oxbow is the one that's rated for 20%.
Okay.
The BI, I don't know what you'd do on that, because those are a little top heavy because the engine sits on top. I don't know. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, well, we shot a video, and I have that video somewhere, of the oxbow when you were driving it at West Madison, and you had one set of wheels, the right set of wheels were on the pavement or on the roadway, and then you had the left ones down in that field. And I would have to say that there was a difference there of probably a foot to 2 feet if you look at the video. And you were able to level that machine with no problem. And if that represented a slope, you were probably at a 20% slope right there. I don't think it's a problem at all for that machine.
So the BI is a little different because you can level, or you can change the front two wheels the height, but the back go together. So I don't know that you can necessarily run across a slope quite as well because of the way it levels.
It doesn't have really a true independent suspension like you would say you had with the oxbow.
Well, just a couple more questions. So what's your sense after 2 years? Can we mechanically harvest shrub type hazelnut? What do you think? Can we do this?
I think we can. It's not going to take all the nuts off or possibly, because they ripen at different times. Farmers or growers should save quite a bit of time with harvesting. I mean, just ask Paul. He was more than happy to have us come out and harvest his crop. Mm-hmm. I mean, we got done in a day what probably would have taken him weeks.
Right.
Yeah, it's essential to have a machine like this if you have any acreage. And absolutely, these machines work very well. We'll give you numbers as we tabulate them, numbers of what Paul picked off the plants after we completed our harvest versus what we actually took off during harvest. And you're going to see that he didn't take off much. We pretty much cleaned his plants, and that was in a single pass. And I think he would tell you that he didn't lose much crop prior to us showing up there. I don't know how many of his plants were ripe and had started dropping clusters prior to our harvest. I don't think it was many, if any.
Right, not much on the ground, and not a lot of squirrel chewed up piles either under the plant, so he's got a pretty protected spot.
It was really clean. I was surprised that we didn't see a lot more stuff. And I was surprised overall, even at Stoughton, that there wasn't as much on the ground as I thought, stuff that we would have knocked off and left on the ground. As Scott said, there is some stuff between rows, and it's really related, I think, to the width of the base of the shrub. And still, I think the oxbow did a pretty good job of working around those plants. We did damage. We broke a few welds on our collection plates on the Oxbow. It's the only issue we had, but man, we were running through some really wide stuff.
Yeah.
So
last question, what's next with the harvesting project? What do you guys want to do?
well, I'm going to focus now on green cluster husking. We know we can knock the nuts off. I think I'll maybe someday experiment with the different types of picking heads, something that is a little bit more robust, less expensive, a lot lighter. I think what we need, my approach would be to make a fairly light machine that doesn't weigh as much as some of these machines we have been operating. And one of the things is how we collect the nuts. We don't need these bucket elevators. We don't have to handle this material with kid gloves. We can use vacuum. We can use augers. That's a whole nother thing. We can drop this stuff in augers. You can auger it directly into a husker. There could be a husker on each side on the bottom. So the first thing that happens is it comes in and it goes right through a husker. It'd be just like a regular combine where you harvest it, and the first thing it does is it goes through a threshing machine and breaks everything up, and that includes your twigs. It takes your nuts out of your clusters, and then we move it into a winnowing operation right after that, and we have our whole nuts. I mean, that's going to be the approach. I think, therefore, I'm not as concerned right now about how these machines handle the crop after it knocks them off, because we're not going to use that method of conveyance in a real harvester for hazelnuts, at least in my opinion. And like I said, you're looking at probably a harvester where the operator would be close to the ground. You know, I work through details of it in my mind when I'm doing odd jobs that don't require a lot of thought, like driving a tractor in circles around the field. But the thing is that the big part of it now is a very robust threshing mechanism, or what we call a husker. And I think our next step is to run that John Bashaw built under the Pendragon name, and observe it, look at how it works, maybe make some adjustments to it. And then I'd like to start working with people that really understand threshing mechanisms, and that would maybe be some retired combine engineers, and see what they recommend. Bring in a threshing mechanism from maybe some newer combines, set them up so that we can adjust a lot of different things on them and see how they operate, and then try to size something that will work for a single row hedgerow hazelnut planting. So I mean, that's what I see our next logical step, because I think we know once we've got it husked how to separate the stuff out fairly well, just like any combine does, using air, using shakers, screens, same stuff that we do right now in our garages with hazelnuts. So.
Well, any last words? Otherwise, we're all in recovery mode, trying to catch up on projects we had to put aside here with hazelnut harvest season. So it's good to have that part done for now.
Yes, yes.
All right. Well, thanks guys for your time, and onward. So concludes the 2020 Hazelnut Harvest Season podcast. If you're looking to see these machines in action, you can go to midwesthazelnuts.org, where we've posted a video with clips of each of these machines in operation. Also, the formal results from our research trials this fall will be available through a webinar, and you can register for that webinar also at midwesthazelnuts.org. Brought to you by the University of Wisconsin-Madison Division of Extension.